It's Victoria. I'm going to tell you the second great story, the coming of life story. So it comes after the great story of the universe that I told in another video. And after this, the timeline of life will come. So normally I would tell the story either in the morning, and then do the timeline in the afternoon, or do the story in one afternoon and do the timeline the next day. So pretty close together. But the story part is just an imaginative, kind of silly story that sets the stage for the timeline, which is a visual story of the evolution of life on Earth. So the story goes something like this. Alright, so hi, do you remember when I told you the story of the universe? You do? Well, we remember then that the whole universe was full of lots of particles spreading out and getting together and forming stars and planets, and our special Earth was created during this time, and it started out so hot, it was all full of gas, and then it started to cool down and into liquids, and finally layers of solid rock formed on top. So when we left off with that story, there was nothing alive on Earth. Not at all. No human beings to see it for sure. Nothing at all. Just a big empty ocean, and rocks, and air, and the sun shining down. So the sun was looking down at the Earth, and it was thinking, oh, what a beautiful Earth. But as it looked closer, it began to notice something. It was raining all the time on Earth, like I mentioned before, raining and raining and raining. And as the rain fell, it would mix with carbon dioxide gas and form a weak acid that would tear away at the rocks. And so rocks were sort of crumbling into the ocean. All the mountains were sort of sinking down. And then there were also crazy storms where the water would just lap at the shore and hit the rocks and break them down even more. And the problem was the ocean was filling with mineral salts, and the mountain and all the land was breaking down, and it felt like the order that had been made was breaking down. Something needed to come to Earth to create order again. So Sun wanted to investigate the problem, and Sun went and asked the water, "Water, why are you crumbling the rocks? Why are you breaking everything down?" And Water said, "What am I doing? I just am following my laws. When I get hot, I disappear. And when I get cold, I sink down, and I'm just here. I'm not doing anything. Why don't you ask air? Air is the one who stirs me up, and then I have to move around. I just go into cracks and hollows, and I sink down, and that's just how water behaves. So go ask air. They're the problem." So Sun went to ask air, "Well, Air, why are you causing all of this chaos on Earth?" And Air said, "Well, who, me? I'm just following my laws. I get cold and I sink down and I rise up when I get hot. And I've been given this huge job of covering the whole Earth, and my head is so cold and my feet are so cold at the bottom. And it's a big job. And, rocks are not any help. So water just jumps on my back to take a ride whenever I go up, and it's very heavy, so when I get hot I have to drop it. And the rocks are no help. They are all wrinkly and bubbly, and they don't move out of the way, and so I have to drop the water. I'm just doing my job, but why don't you go talk to rocks, because they are the problem." So then Sun went to the rocks and the mountains and said, "Rocks, why are you causing this imbalance? What are you doing?" And the rock said, "What? We're just sitting here. That's all we can do. We just don't even move. We get hot, sure, but that's because the sun is shining on us. And I think you are the culprit, Sun. You are doing making everything happen." So basically, Sun realized they were all at fault, and even though this beautiful, orderly Earth had been created, it was falling into chaos, and something magical happened and mysterious, and little tiny bits of life began to fill the oceans, and they would eat up the mineral salts and build things on their bodies over time. The very first life was so teeny tiny we couldn't even see it, but over time it got bigger, it copied itself, it would eat, and it would grow, and all living things would follow these rules. They would eat and grow and make copies of themselves, and eventually life started to change and fill the oceans and use up the mineral salts and build interesting bodies. And we know this part of the story because we found some of these creatures with these interesting shells, and they fell to the bottom of the ocean into the mud and got pressed down, and we found their fossils. And so we can see how old these living things are and what their shells look like, and understand that all of these creatures lived so long ago and filled the oceans. And sort of we have a little story of what early life on Earth was like. It's written in the rocks and in the soil and in the fossils that we find. So later I'm going to show you a little bit more about the different kinds of life and what happened once life came to Earth. And in the meantime, you can explore this book. Yeah, something like that. So anyway, I'm going to go get the timeline and show you a little overview of that.